Blessings, namaste, and love, everyone. I'm spiritualist, psychic, astrologer, and medium Ray Sette. Once again, I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share with you my astrological and spiritual insights as we progress into the month of March 2023. Once again, we are progressing through these times at rapid speeds. And because of all of this, and because of how quickly everything seems to be unfolding, we do suggest and inspire you to be very mindful, to be very present, and very much in the moment, and to focus on the blessings that are already surrounding you. So often we direct our attention towards our goals, the future, if you will. Remember, we are creating the future now. One of my sayings from a very, very, very long time ago is look to the future. The future is now. The future is very much in this present of now. And metaphysically, we understand that there really is all one moment. And on a spiritual level, all which has ever occurred has happened simultaneously. So I do inspire us all to be very present, be very much in the moment. Direct your attention towards the many, many blessings that are already surrounded you. And remember, when we direct our attention, whatever it is that we direct our attention towards, we magnify. So when we direct our attention towards our blessings that are already present with us, we amplify those blessings. If we are directing our attention towards any seeming lack that is surround us, then we just reinforce and inadvertently miscreate the lack. That being said, we begin March with a full moon on March 7th, and the exact time of that lunation is 7:40 a.m. Now, this specific full moon amplifies and energizes the Virgo, Pisces, Virgo polarity. The full moon is in Pisces at almost 17 degrees of Pisces, and the sun is continuing its transit through, the full moon is at almost 17 degrees of Virgo, then the sun at almost 17 degrees of Pisces. And in the chart cast for the United States, that element, the full moon, is energizing the sixth house sector of the chart. Now, among many things, that sixth house represents health, wellness, and our well-being. This, for some, could be an opportunity to release anything discordant, which inadvertently, specifically discordant emotions, which inadvertently create an imbalance and disharmony in the physical form. Many are familiar with Louise Hay's book, Louise Hay's very progressive book, You Can Heal Your Life, which was published, I believe, in the mid 80s. I don't remember if it was around 86, 87, or 88, around that time, but the information in that book is extremely progressive and really talks about how we inadvertently create these imbalances and from the discord which many of us carry throughout our lifetime. This full moon is very much an opportunity, one, to very much become instrumental in your wellness and your personal wellness regimen in whatever way resonates for you, as long as it's serving a greater purpose for you and it's allowing you to enjoy optimum health and well-being. Remember, any changes, whether it's pertaining to the physical form of the body, physical health, or anything else around us, needs to occur. The changes need to occur from within ourselves, so that we can so we can correct whatever might be in disharmony that is occurring in the outside world. That Virgo Pisces polarity also represents the polarity of fear and faith and fear. Virgo can potentially generate a tremendous amount of fear, one, because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is the planet of the mind. When we allow ourselves to when we allow the thoughts to just run amok, which sometimes Virgo does, because it can be very analytical, but when it's grounded, that energy of the mind, that dynamic of the mind, can be very, very creative. You see how there's a difference there? There's always a positive and a negative polarity of any of the signs and the planets, and whatever it is that we direct our attention towards, that's what we bring to form. And when we can understand how to correct any imbalances, then we receive and create a much more positive result from the dynamic of the experience. And as I was saying, because Mercury is ruled by Virgo, when the mind runs amok, that's when many times and quite often we do have those connections or those experiences of fear. Pisces is absolute faith and trust, and in knowing that all is well and all is unfolding perfectly, even though the physical eyes of our human form may perhaps suggest otherwise. That Pisces element is absolute faith. The Virgo element is fear. Pisces is absolute faith. And when we emphasize the potential of something negative, it's certainly not a judgment. We share this to bring about greater awareness. And as I suggest, this is an opportunity to, one, recognize if there is any discord or imbalances in your physical form and have the courage to address them from an alternative understanding. Remember, there's no right or wrong to all of this. It's whatever serves a greater purpose for you. However, we do inspire to recognize, and it does require courage to really become accountable and responsible for recognizing how we create the imbalances in the physical form through discordant emotions. I'm keeping this very, very simple, and I would inspire those much more interested in how all of this works, especially metaphysically, to perhaps consider the suggestions that have been shared with us in Louise Hay's books, You Can Heal Your Life. I discovered that book in the late 80s when I really began my studies of metaphysics, and it just reinforced much of what I've already known regarding health, wellness, and well-being, and for myself personally has served a greater purpose. And because of that, I share it with you. Now, also on the day of the full moon is at 7:40 a.m. Later on in the day not within an hour, less than an hour later, at 8:34 a.m., Saturn will change signs and move into Pisces. Saturn has been Aquarius, now it's going to be moving into Pisces. A complete Saturn cycle, Saturn transiting all the signs of the zodiac requires about between 28 and 30 years, depending upon the retrograde cycles of Saturn. Saturn generally stays in a sign about 2.5 years. Remember, it could be a little different from each one, but I want to just emphasize right now, Saturn is transiting into Pisces. Now, Saturn is the planet of karma. Saturn, which many also don't recognize, is the planet which brings rewards, karma and rewards. Now, when we address karma is not necessarily a reward and punishment, and I'll talk about the rewards with Saturn later, but many of us have a misunderstanding of karma and how it really works. Karma really just brings balance to where there has been imbalance. And it's basically whatever we've set in motion, whether it be positive or negative, returns to us. When we've generated very positive energy, what comes back to us are some very beneficial results which Saturn will bring to us. Pisces also connects with karma, because in the natural zodiac it connects to the 12th house sector. The 12th house is the sector of the chart which represents all that is going on behind the scenes, all that is taking place in our subconsciousness, our unconsciousness. That 12th house also represents the embodiment we encountered prior to this incarnation. So you can see many times when the 12th house is activated in the chart of an individual, we are presented with an opportunity to correct karma that not only perhaps we have generated in this lifetime, but also in the prior lifetime. This passage of Saturn in Pisces is most likely the most auspicious opportunity for everyone to recognize whatever karma needs to be corrected. Remember, karma will correct where there is any imbalances. It's a correction. It's not a reward and punishment. Karma is a correction. Keep that in mind. But this passage of Saturn into Pisces is universally providing everyone this opportunity to really go within and strengthen what is inside of us, especially strengthening the mind. Saturn through Pisces is one of the most auspicious opportunities to really embrace and move forward with the daily regimen of meditation, because in Pisces it will strengthen the subconscious. You see, wherever Saturn transits in a chart, it strengthens. And quite often, in order to do that, we will be presented with an opportunity which must be surmounted. And quite often, we misinterpret the experience and we observe it as being a challenge. Something has been put in our way. There's a roadblock. However, whenever we embrace an alternative understanding to any experience, we create a much more altruistic, beneficial result from the encounter. So as I said, Saturn will be in Pisces for about 2.5 years, and it begins its sojourn through Pisces on March 7th, interestingly enough, on the day of the full moon. You see, when Saturn completes a cycle in our lives, the very first time that Saturn completes a complete revolution of the astrological chart is when we are about 28, 29 years old. That's when we, on an astrological level, become the adult. Once we have passed what is referred to as our Saturn return in our late 20s, that's when we cross the threshold from childhood, if you will, to adulthood. The next stage at which we experience that is about 58, 59 years old. And as I understand it, that's when we really are supposed to retire, if you will. Although, quite often, many of us at that time in our lives will have the encounter and their opportunity to really understand why we are here and perhaps pursue something greater. One more point I want to emphasize regarding karma. We understand metaphysically that once we have corrected 51% of whatever karma is required of us to rise above in this embodiment, we are then free to embrace our destiny in whatever that might be. So I would suggest and strongly inspire everyone to allow yourselves to recognize and maybe ask Spirit to show you, all right, what more is required on my part in terms of correcting karma that perhaps was necessary for my spiritual evolution while I am here in this physical form. And being very dedicated to that will allow you to become much more free to pursue your desires, your joy, your happiness, as well as a greater purpose. We can't emphasize that enough. You know, so many individuals are being inspired to really recognize why they are here and to embrace love, peace, and joy within themselves. And by being so, don't discredit how we create some very beneficial changes in the outside world. Remember, as difficult as it is right now, when we are very dedicated to maintaining a higher vibrational frequency within ourselves, remember, that's what you're generating to the outside world. You know, whenever we have experiences of, for example, depression, it is suggested to really direct your attention towards anything which elevates your vibrational frequency, because by being at an elevated vibrational frequency, it assists in dissolving that heaviness, that density that surrounds our energy, our auric field, that quite often brings forth some discordant experiences such as anxiety and depression. Now, I'm keeping this very, very simple for those interested in these alternative understandings. I strongly suggest exploring these realms of possibilities and embrace whatever resonates with you on a personal level. Now, we are going to be moving towards our next new moon. Now, as I've always mentioned in prior videos, prior to the new moon, we have what is known as the balsamic moon phase, which is the last phase of the moon that assists us and offers us the opportunity to prepare for the next lunar cycle. And the balsamic moon phase begins on March 18th at 6:58 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're moving into Eastern Daylight Time, the second Sunday in March. So the balsamic moon phase begins on March 18th at 6:58 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That is the opportunity to prepare for the next lunar cycle. Now, a couple of days later, on March 20th, at 5:24 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the sun transits into the sign of Aries. That is the spring vernal equinox. Aries, remember, begins the cycle of experience of the tropical zodiac, which there is, and I keep saying I need to do a video of this. There is a difference between the tropical and the sidereal zodiac. The tropical zodiac is based upon the tropics, like, for example, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, as well as the measurement and the angle of the sun throughout the year. You know, when we look at the sidereal zodiac, which is connected to the constellations, they're not always equal. For example, the Pisces constellation is very long and very large. The Aries constellation is very, very short, and it's not equal, as are the passages and the angles of the sun. But throughout the year, for example, at the summer solstice, which connects with the Tropic of the Tropic of Cancer, the sun is at the highest point in the sky. The Tropic of Capricorn, which is connected to the winter solstice, where the sun is at the lowest point in the sky, and the equinoxes, the spring equinox, the vernal equinox, as well as the autumn equinox. That's where the sun is right in the middle of those 2 points. And if we measure or pinpoint and plot the position of the sun every day in the sky at noon, it will actually create a figure 8, the infinity sign, which I always find it very fascinating how we have these images and this symbology very much in nature. Remember that figure 8 is as above and so below. I digressed a little bit, but just, a little bit more information just to keep you inspired and to really understand how we're all connected with all of this. As I said, on March 20th at 5:24 p.m. we begin the spring season. I always suggest that the winter time frame really is the time for spring cleaning and clearing away. Specifically that Pisces time when the sun transits Pisces, because that Pisces element, as I referred to earlier, represents that which is hidden, that which is in the subconscious. And again, as I've always said, the home is a representation or reflection of the outer body. Whenever there's discord in the home, it's a reflection of the energy that all the occupants are creating in the home, as well as whatever items perhaps are in the home. I mean, this video will be released at the end of February, so we still have like a few weeks to really, really clear some of this out. That the full moon on March 7th, that would be a great time to really, really do some energetic, spiritual rotor-rooter cleaning in your home and clear out all the discord. So once the spring season begins, it's a new cycle of experience and you begin a fresh start. As we go into Aries, I always suggest to really just kind of recognize Aries connects with ambition, mainly because it's ruled by the planet Mars. Let yourself, through as the sun goes through Aries, really allow yourself to recognize perhaps what perhaps you may not have necessarily been feeling ambitious about that you would like to correct, and really reflect on whatever might be required on your part to really make some changes. Many of us are feeling very lethargic because there's a lot of heaviness in the world, and so many don't recognize how they're connected to the discord in the outside world, and it does interfere with our ambition. So perhaps, as we go into the sign of Aries, because it's ruled by Mars, it's a great time to recharge your battery. We get out a little bit more because the weather, for the most part, becomes a little bit more favorable to be outdoors and to be outside. Get outside, feel the sun on your face, connect with nature, and really, really recharge your battery and energize yourself as we go through the spring time frame and prepare us for whatever is coming next. Now, on March 21st, which is the day after the vernal equinox, on March 21st, we have our next new moon. And the exact time of the new moon is March 21st at 1:22 p.m. Eastern Daylight Sign. The sun and the moon are in the sign of Aries, and they're in the early degrees of Aries. And during this spring time frame, actually, when we cast a chart for that new moon, and for the United States, we use Washington D.C. as a basis to create the chart for the full moon. It's because it's at the highest point in that chart, and it's also energizing the highest point, which is the midheaven of the chart, which is the highest point of the chart, and it's specifically located in the ninth house sector of the chart. What I would suggest to recognize, especially because it's in the early degrees of Aries, as I was addressing earlier about ambition, and really recognizing where perhaps it is necessary for us to apply that ambition and to be ambitious. You know, Aries is the sign, because it's the first sign of the zodiac. It's the sign of the initiator. It begins. It's also the sign of the entrepreneur, and so many are finding how, or rather recognizing that they are very, very entrepreneurial. Now, it doesn't. When I say entrepreneurial, I'm not being specific to like business endeavors, but what I would suggest, especially on this new moon, to really plant the seeds in motion, to recognize how you very much are your own entrepreneur in whatever way that you would like to demonstrate that potential. You know, Aries, the challenge with Aries is that it sets in motion, it will plant the seeds, but it will not always follow through with whatever it has cast in motion. So what I would suggest on this new moon, and even when the sun is transiting in the sign of Aries, recognize perhaps what you on a personal level, what you have not allowed yourself to really follow through with. Many times that connects with, success and or feeling of not being deserving of what we choose to be successful in and to create. This is a time to correct all of that. You know, recognize where perhaps you need to be ambitious, where you haven't been ambitious, and also to let yourself recognize in whatever facet of your lives, whatever element that is necessary for you to follow through with and complete, and really just allow yourself to really welcome and be okay with enjoying your accomplishments. Also, I suggest honor the accomplishments that you have already created in your lives. Now, one final point is that on March 23rd, Pluto will transit into the sign Aquarius. It will dip back and forth, it dip back into Capricorn and then fully advance into Aquarius later on this year, but it begins its passage in the sign of Aquarius. Now, Pluto requires anywhere from 12 to about 32 years to transit each sign of the zodiac. Pluto began its transit into Capricorn in roughly about 2008. In this year, it will complete its transit of Capricorn and begin its next evolutionary cycle of experience in Aquarius. Now, this Pluto transit into Aquarius, and Pluto, to make a complete cycle, I believe it requires, and sometimes I forget about a lot of this stuff, about 279 years. So Pluto is very evolutionary, and the only transit of an entire chart, if you will, that Pluto will really encounter is connected with the charts of nations and countries. In some of my writings, I've talked about how in the United States we are experiencing what is known as a Pluto return. Like earlier I mentioned a Saturn return. Every planet has a return when it comes back to the exact position it was at the moment that we are born. The significance of it is really dependent on where it takes place and the aspects that it forms. Once again, I digress, but I want to just emphasize the Pluto transiting into Aquarius. Wherever Pluto transits, it transforms, but it also dissolves whatever is not whatever it will dissolve whatever is not in alignment with a higher truth. So one of the many things that Pluto will be dissolving as it progresses into the sign Aquarius, which Aquarius represents the conventional realms of science. Whatever higher truths need to be revealed regarding what we have been shown of the elements of science will be presented to us. We will really see how perhaps we've been misled in certain areas of science, and that, I talked about how quite often in 2003, 2004, we really began being presented with the opportunity to recognize how there's no difference between science and spirituality. Metaphysical in the higher realms, science and spirituality is all one and the same, and we will begin to really, really understand and know how all of this works. What we've been taught, as I said, whatever untruths have been shared, Pluto will always dissolve. Many times when we experience on a personal level a very intense Pluto transit, whatever isn't in alignment, whatever falsehoods that we have perhaps created about ourselves will be dissolved. Pluto emphasizes a powerful, profound metamorphosis. And I learned very, very long time ago that wherever Pluto transits in the chart, nothing is ever the same. However, it's not something to fear but to embrace. The best way to describe a Pluto transit is the metamorphosis of a caterpillar going into a cocoon and becoming that butterfly. I always inspire whoever is encountering a significant Pluto transit to really keep in mind that element of the butterfly and how that you are becoming the butterfly. Pluto in Aquarius will accelerate the advance towards that age of Aquarius, which by my calculations, really, we're not going to really cross that threshold until about 2165. I believe that's what I calculated. However, it doesn't indicate that we cannot enjoy the many blessings of really that sense of oneness. Pluto in Aquarius is very much allowing us to welcome that element of oneness, brotherhood, humanitarianism, and in order to do that, whatever is not in alignment with those higher vibrational elements will be dissolved. So I think I've gone a little bit longer with this video, and these are just some of the many, many aspects that we experience during the month. I like to highlight just the most significant ones, and sometimes I feel that we really don't do justice to really sharing our insights, but we do plant seeds and inspire you to always, as always, with all of this, recognize the many blessings and the greatest potential that you are always being shown about yourself. On April 17th, I believe, I will begin my next residence at the Mystical Moon in Fort Myers and Bonita Beach, Florida. My schedule is already filling up. I've already been receiving notices of clients scheduling time with me. We always suggest schedule time ahead of time because the schedule does fill up very, very, very quickly. You can contact the centers directly to schedule your time with me. So once again, I thank you for this very brief opportunity to share with you some of my astrological and spiritual insights for the month of March 2023. Many blessings. Stay in the light, always in a place of love. Namaste.